News!
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with the Israel Madrimov versus Magomed Kurbanov junior middleweight title fight for what was the newly vacated WBA title at 154 pounds, Jermel Charlo's old WBA title that he has since relinquished.
Told you he was going to do that.
I went with Israel Madrimov to win a points decision, and he took it a step further and scored a knockout. In the fight, which you saw, was a lot of pressure from Israel Madrimov early on, but educated pressure.
It didn't take him long to establish his dominance, stepping into the jab, jabbing at Magomed Kurbanov's chest.
Jabs to the head, jabs to the chest. It's the jabs to the chest that opened up Magomed Kurbanov for those left hooks.
Yeah.
Israel might get in with a couple of jabs upstairs, at which point Magomed would start protecting his head, protecting himself, at which point Israel responded by jabbing at his chest.
Get him to drop his hands.
These were authoritative jabs, hard jabs to Magomed Kurbanov's chest. Drop his hands to protect himself, at which point Israel would go upstairs with left hooks.
Noticeable difference in power.
Israel seemed a lot stronger than Magomed Kurbanov. Craftier to the eye, but stronger as well, physically stronger. Lighter on his feet, too.
More athletic.
Israel Madrimov was bouncier, herky-jerkier, more fidgety. Staying with Magomed Kurbanov the whole time, staying within striking distance, but still being a tricky target while he does it, moving his head, moving his torso, moving around.
Where Magomed was a lot more textbook.
A lot more conventional, I want to say. A lot more simple in his approach. Israel was a lot more streamlined, nuanced.
Impressive.
Quicker to the draw, more speed in those hands, more speed in those feet, moving his head, moving his torso, getting under and or around Kurbanov's punches whenever he did draw out Magomed Kurbanov's lead, all while staying with him, all while staying in front of him.
That's what makes him so tricky. It seems like he's right there. It seems like he's right in front of you.
Till you try for a shot and hit nothing but air, like Magomed Kurbanov did. Little success for the Russian fighter, who has largely benefited from having most of his fights in his native Russia, where he's received more than one dubious decision.
Not this time.
Has to have been frustrating for Magomed Kurbanov to be in there with a mid-range to inside fighter like himself, who is seemingly within striking distance. He's seemingly there to be hit, but you just can't catch him because he's moving so much.
You can't catch him all the while. He's catching you.
Showing a little bit of everything while he does it.
Having it all his way.
Jabs up top, several jabs upstairs, and when Magomed goes to protect his head, Israel starts jabbing at his chest.
Starts landing jabs to the chest. He goes to protect his chest. He gets caught with a left hook or a right hand upstairs. He did a great job.
Fantastic job of opening up his opponent, taking the initiative, fighting his fight, and opening up the other guy who was fighting a reactionary kind of fight, scoring a fifth round TKO stoppage after visibly rattling Magomed Kurbanov's cage, backing him into the ropes, and unleashing a salvo of punches.
He did better than I expected.
Thus, a new WBA champion is crowned, and I want to say, based on what I saw, Israel Madrimov, he's going to be a handful. For any fighter, any champion that wants to unify, wants to become undisputed, if they have to go through him, they have a long night ahead of them. That applies to Tim Tszyu.
That applies to the winner of Murtazaliev versus Kolkay for the IBF. That applies to the winner of Fundora versus Bohachuk for the WBC.
The landscape is rapidly changing at 154 pounds, and Israel Madrimov of Uzbekistan emerges as a very dangerous fight, a very dangerous fighter, dangerous champion.
By way of the WBA.
Congratulations to him. He was able to meet and exceed my expectations, because I had him winning a points decision. He scored a knockout.
The prediction stuck, and he is the junior middleweight division's newly crowned WBA champion.
We then come to the WBC featherweight title fight between Ray Vargas, the champion, and Nick Ball, the challenger, a fight that was scored a draw ahead of it. I went with Nick Ball to win a points decision, understanding that Ray Vargas is a lot more experienced than Nick Ball. By and large, he's a more experienced fighter, a noticeably bigger fighter.
Difference in size was dramatic.
Albeit a very inactive fighter, a fighter that hadn't fought in about a year ahead of this fight, and a fighter that hasn't been fighting all that much the last 1 or 2 years. So there may be ring rust there. His timing might be off. I want to say that at the start, the first half of the fight, that's all Ray Vargas. I had it Vargas 5 rounds to 1 after 6. It's not till the second half that Nick Ball really starts coming on.
Winning rounds.
Scoring knockdowns. Not clean knockdowns. They weren't clean knockdowns, but they were knockdowns.
They count.
In what was a messy affair, a scrappy affair. Due to the discrepancy in size, it was very difficult for Nick Ball at the start to get close to Ray Vargas, who was doing what he normally does, moving around, managing the distance, staying behind his jab.
Asserting himself in spots when he need to, stepping into his punches, ripping combinations, going to Nick Ball's body, got in with some really good body shots.
Nick Ball on the receiving end of those body shots, he wore them well.
First half of the fight, that's Vargas. Second half of the fight, that's Ball.
Ball's rushing him, he's crowding him.
He has to.
So much shorter than Ray Vargas, he has no choice but to try to get close to him because he can't do anything until he does. Both men losing form. As a result, Nick Ball desperate to get in with clean punches, get close to Ray Vargas, and Ray Vargas losing form in the process as Ball rushes him.
They both did.
Ray Vargas is losing form because he's struggling to keep Nick Ball out in the second half of the fight. And Nick Ball is losing form because he's diving in, he's overshooting it.
He's pushing with his punches.
And headhunting. I didn't see Nick Ball throw very many, if any, body shots in this fight, even though Ray Vargas's body, it was there.
Nick Ball being so much shorter with a lower center of gravity, Ray Vargas having that long torso, you would have thought that Nick would have made a conscious effort to go to Ray's body to slow him down because he keeps moving around. That's what's keeping him in the fight.
You would have thought that Nick would have tried for more body shots, but he didn't. He spent most of the fight headhunting, throwing single jabs and looking to land a big right.
Power was there.
Whenever he did get through with a clean shot, a solid shot, you saw it rattled Ray Vargas, who I've no doubts struggled to get down to 126 after all this time, struggled to get to featherweight.
That's a sign.
Whenever Nick got in with a clean shot, rate it and take it well.
Dirty boxing from Nick Ball.
At one point, Nick Ball looks to have used a judo toss to floor Ray Vargas, visibly frustrated, holding him down several times, forcing Ray to take a knee.
It was messy.
The aesthetic of the match was messy, scrappy, a byproduct of the discrepancy in size between the fighters that Nick Ball is trying so hard to get close to Ray Vargas, who's not only taller and longer, but he's moving. He keeps moving around.
No arguments with the draw.
No disagreements from me. It's a tale of two halves. The first half went to Ray Vargas, most of it, and most of the second half went to Nick Ball.
Scored 2 knockdowns.
They weren't clean knockdowns per se, but they were knockdowns, and he did score them.
Nick's approach was too simple.
Throwing single jabs to try to bring over the right instead of doubling up and tripling up on the jab.
Nick's approach was too simple.
Doing too much headhunting instead of going to Ray Vargas's body so he doesn't move around as much so you can slow him down.
Nick's approach was too simple.
I expected better because his power was still there. It was evident that if he can get in, he can hurt Ray Vargas. But he needs to diversify his offense to get in. He's throwing single jabs, pushing with the jab, lunging, leaping, rushing.
It's just messy.
Unfortunately, Ray Vargas got to keep his title. Fight was scored a draw. And you wonder that the featherweight division wouldn't have been better off with that title going to Nick Ball, who perhaps would have unified it with Ray Ford in the upcoming Matchroom versus Queensberry show over the summer months.
This is the one prediction I missed yesterday. I went with Nick Ball to win a points decision. Fight was scored a draw instead.
For better or worse, the title's going to stay with Ray. And I don't know what he's going to do with it because all the big fights for him are on other sides of the street, whether you're talking about Raymond Ford on the Matchroom side of things or the two other titles that are over there at Top Rank.
I don't know what he's going to do.
But he managed to survive Nick Ball. He managed to stay WBC champion.
Congratulations to him.
We then come to the heavyweight contest between the former champion Joseph Parker and the current reigning WBO interim champion Zhang.
Zhang.
I went with Joseph Parker to win a points decision with the understanding that Zhang has more than enough power to hurt him. He has more than enough power to put him down. But Zhang is not that prolific a puncher. He's a talented counter-puncher when the counters are available, though he's not the busiest fighter, certainly not the youngest. This guy's pushing 40, and as the fight progresses, if Joseph is still there, he can win a points decision behind activity.
He did.
It might be hard for some to digest that Zhang, despite of scoring 2 knockdowns in the fight, 2 dramatic knockdowns in the fight, that in and of itself wasn't enough to win it. That Joseph Parker, while being the busier fighter, his punches were not having the effect on Zhang that Zhang's punches were having on him, but he was busier. He was landing more. And it's landing more. It's being busier that won Joseph the fight.
Zhang scored an early knockdown off a peach of a left hand, a straight left hand that sat Joe on his back pocket. The second knockdown was off a short right hook, a very short right hook. You almost didn't see it.
And that was the second knockdown. But Joseph Parker, to his credit, he can take a shot. He can take a punch, and he survived. He picked himself up both times, got back in the fight, got his legs back under him.
And he was busier.
I never saw him hurt Zhile Zhang. I never saw him rattle him, buzz him. I never saw anything Joseph Parker landed on Zhang have a big effect, but he was landing. He was getting in with short left hooks on the inside, couple of right hands here and there.
Body shots here and there.
He never really put a dent in Zhile Zhang, but he was busier throughout. What seems to have been affecting my perception of the match is that even in rounds where Joseph is busier, even in rounds that he won, there was a feeling that he's in danger, that he could go at any moment, because the difference in power was dramatic, that when Zhang is having success, it's a lot more dramatic than when Joe is.
He doesn't need to hit him but so many times to hurt him. Look at what he did to his nose.
As a result of that, I feel like I was overlooking Joseph Parker's work, not appreciating it, that he is piling up the points.
He did.
Resilient is the best way to describe Joseph Parker's efforts in this match, cornered by former champion Andy Lee, who seems to have made all the difference in Joseph Parker's career, that is now getting a second win. He is WBO interim champion.
Yes.
He is in line to fight for the full WBO title once the dust settles between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk, but he's not out of the woods yet. The story is that there's a rematch clause. I don't mind the idea of a second fight. I don't mind the idea of a rematch because it might go differently the second time out. The adjustment that Zhang would have to make in a second fight isn't really a big one. He just has to let his hands go more. He has to open up more. We know he's got enough power to hurt Joe. We know he's got enough power to put him down. And we also know he's a crafty boxer, a crafty southpaw.
Throw more punches.
The prediction may have stuck, but Joseph Parker's strategy was not what I envisioned. He spent a lot of time mid-range to outside or trying to stay on the outside, and that's not a good idea for the shorter fighter. That's what lost him the Joe Joyce fight.
You're giving a taller, longer guy the room he needs to get off his shots. The silver lining was Zhang's not a prolific puncher anyway, so he's not going to throw but so many.
But fighting him at that distance, at that range, that's why he got caught with that big left hand.
Because Zhang had the room to throw it. Joseph gave it to him.
I thought he would spend a lot more time rushing Zhang, trying to crowd the pocket to fluster him. Must have felt Zhang's power early and made a decision he's not going to get cute with this guy, but as a result, he sometimes gave him too much space, too much room to work.
Well, he won the fight, so you can't really argue with results now, can you?
No, you can't. Whatever he did, it worked, but he had to go through hell. Well, it worked the second time out because there's a distinct possibility that there could be a second fight.
I don't know.
It's good that the fighters are fighting. It's good that the fighters aren't playing it safe and sitting on their hands, sitting on the sidelines, that Zhang is rolling the dice, and so is Joseph Parker, what is made possible by Turki Al-Sheikh's cash injections into the sport of boxing. It's great to see we're getting fights like this.
I wouldn't mind another.
A rematch? I could go for it, because there's enough there from Zhang that he could beat Joseph in the second fight. He just has to throw more. And finally, we come to last night's main event that has left us with a lot to reflect upon, even if it didn't last that long. The prediction stuck. I went with Anthony Joshua to stop Francis Ngannou, though admittedly, I thought it would go a little longer. I thought that Francis would do a little better.
Sheesh.
MMA fighters that cross over into boxing, MMA fighters in a very general sense, abide by the principle that a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
Say that again?
They abide by the principle that a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one, which is a flawed principle. That's not actually true. Dabbling in so many things simultaneously, boxing, kickboxing, wrestling,
So many things at the same time.
it distracts you from perfecting your form in any one discipline like boxing or wrestling, because you're getting a little bit from here, a little bit from there, so you know a little bit about each, but you're not actually an expert in any of them.
So how do you think that plays out in a boxing ring?
As stated, yesterday's highlight reel knockout has left us with a lot to reflect upon, and you could come at this story from many different angles, so I'll try to focus on what we saw. Francis Ngannou...
Don't worry, we'll get to the Fury stuff.
We'll talk about that in another video, but Francis Ngannou, you saw he was trying to fence with Anthony Joshua, trying to fence with the jabs and biting on every single feint.
Trying to keep up with him.
Francis Ngannou comes out of the orthodox stance, trying for a lot of shots, trying for a lot of punches, not having too much success, but he's in a fight.
Anthony Joshua, the leaner, longer fighter of the two, slightly taller.
Lighter on his feet, he's circling Francis Ngannou, managing the distance,
Probing with the jab.
getting Francis Ngannou to bite light on those foot feints.
Probing with the jab, fires a straight right hand down the pipe.
Scoring the very first knockdown of the fight in the first round. Very hard knockdown. Francis Ngannou looked like he never felt power like that before in spite of all of his experiences in the octagon.
Small bit in the boxing ring with Tyson Fury late last year, who I told you, he don't hit like Anthony. He can't land with the same authority.
He's more herky-jerky. He's more fidgety. He doesn't fully commit to his shots, even the power shots.
He just kind of slaps with him.
Anthony scores a hard knockdown towards the tail end of the first round. At the start of the second, more fencing, more managing the distance, pecking away at Francis Ngannou with single jabs.
Francis trying for jabs of his own.
Not landing. He tries for a left hook and gets countered down the middle by a right hand. A straight right hand, another right hand down the pipe.
Sending him down for the second time.
Picks himself up, not fully recovered from that second knockdown. AJ moves in for the kill, seeing his man is on clear street. Shoots another massive right hand that sends him down for the third time. Final time.
What happened?
How could the same Francis Ngannou that had so much success with Tyson Fury not but a few months ago get dispatched so easily, so quickly by Anthony Joshua? And it's a combination of things, one of which is perception. Tyson Fury's not as big a puncher as you guys think just because he beat up Deontay Wilder.
Deontay sucks.
He always sucked, and you guys blew it out of proportion that Tyson Fury beat him, telling yourselves that all of a sudden Fury's this big puncher, this massive puncher, just because he beat Deontay.
Bullshit.
Fury's not that big a puncher. So when he goes in there with a Francis Ngannou and he can't put him away, well, it's because he's not as big a puncher as you think. He's not as good a boxer either.
He's overrated.
That doesn't mean he's bad. That doesn't mean he's garbage. That means he's overrated. He's not as good as you think.
Not as defensible either. That's why he got put down in the Francis Ngannou fight, and that's why Francis Ngannou got put down in the Joshua fight.
Because Fury's overrated and Anthony is underrated.
As stated, Fury's not as big a puncher as you guys think, and he's not as defensible as you guys think.
In tandem with Francis Ngannou not being as durable as you guys thought. Because you see him taking shots in the cage, you see him taking shots in mixed martial arts in the octagon, and you think it's the same kind of shots he'd take in a boxing ring.
It's not.
Those guys don't know their range like boxers do. They don't have the same form. Why would they? It's a different discipline.
Jack of all trades, master of none, remember?
The power that comes with a fighter's size is amplified by the fighter's form, and Francis was never going to have the same form as Anthony.
What did you think was gonna happen?